Jake just didn't think it would happen to him. It started small. The next morning, Jake found his motorcycle tipped over in his driveway, the seat slashed. A day later, a spray-painted skull and scythe appeared on his garage door. He called the police again, but they were less enthusiastic this time. "Without evidence, there's not much we can do," the officer said, avoiding Jake's gaze. Jake's frustration boiled over. "Evidence? I gave you a damn photo of those bastards. What more do you need?" The officer sighed. "Look, Mr. Tanner, the Reapers, they're dangerous. Most people around here know not to get involved." The unspoken message was clear. Drop it. But Jake wasn't the kind of man to back down. The threats escalated. One night, as Jake was locking up his house, he noticed something off. The back door was ajar. His stomach dropped. Inside, the living room was trashed, furniture overturned, broken glass scattered across the floor. On the wall, scrawled in red spray paint, were the words, "Mind your business, soldier." Jake's hands shook as he cleaned up the mess. He couldn't tell if it was anger or fear or both. When his sister called the next day, asking him to visit her and his niece for dinner, he hesitated. He wanted to see them, but the thought of putting them in danger made him sick. So he lied. "Can't tonight," he said, his voice tight. "Maybe next week." He hung up, staring at the photo of his niece on the fridge. The final warning came 3 days later. Jake was walking out of the hardware store when he saw a group of Reapers leaning against their bikes, watching him. Viper, the gang's leader, stepped forward, his snake tattoo coiling as he tilted his head. "You've been busy," Viper said, his voice smooth and menacing. "Taking pictures, making calls. That's not very neighborly of you." Jake squared his shoulders, meeting Viper's gaze. "You can scare the cops. You can scare this whole damn town. But you don't scare me." Viper smirked. "You should be scared, soldier. You don't want us visiting your family, do you?" Jake's blood turned cold. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Viper's words, the threat hanging over him like a storm cloud. He considered calling his sister, warning her to stay away, but what could he say? That he'd put her and her daughter in danger by standing up to a gang? As he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the phone, he heard it, the rumble of motorcycles. The next morning, Jake's motorcycle was found idling in his driveway, its engine still running. The house was empty. The police launched an investigation, scouring the area for any sign of Jake, but there was nothing. No fingerprints, no blood, no clues. Only silence. The official report ruled his disappearance as likely voluntary, a polite way of saying they didn't have the resources or the courage to pursue it further. His sister didn't believe it. She knew Jake would never just leave, not without saying goodbye. But in the quiet hours of the night, when she sat alone in her house, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, in the dark, the gang was still watching. Months later, the Reapers continued their reign over the town. The police kept their distance, the locals stayed silent, and the only trace of Jake Tanner was the faint sound of his bike's engine, still echoing in the memories of those who cared to remember. And somewhere, the gang celebrated another victory, their power unchallenged, their message clear. Some fights weren't meant to be won. The end. Let me know what you think.